apologize to those that I let down for letting some suckers play me.
Jimmy's a rat, man. Jimmy's a cold stone rat.
Paperwork and Henchman and them niggas supposed to come through, and I guess they gun jammed, but we had God on that side, and they backed out on the hit, but we had straps too.
When Jimmy Henchman crossed paths with 50 Cent, he didn't expect much. At first, Henchman saw 50 as just another rapper trying to act tough, but what came next proved otherwise.
To satisfy Rosemond. After the assault on his son, Rosemond decided that a member of G Unit had to die.
From quiet tension to federal indictments, things got deadly fast. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson wasn't acting. His past, his decisions, and his survival were all real. And by the time Henchman realized it, the damage was done. This is the story of the moment Jimmy Henchman found out who 50 Cent really was and how that moment quietly shifted power behind the scenes in the music industry. The moment Jimmy Henchman realized 50 Cent was more than image can be traced back to a series of escalating incidents that peaked in 2007. It began earlier, with growing tensions between G Unit and artists managed by Henchman, particularly The Game. However, the defining moment was the March 2007 assault on Henchman's teenage son, allegedly by G Unit member Tony Yayo and G Unit affiliate Lowell Lodi Mac Fletcher. The incident took place in Manhattan outside the offices of Violator Management.
To satisfy Rosemond. After the assault on his son, Rosemond decided that a member of G Unit had to die.
Jimmy Henchman's son got slapped up. And that set off a whole really bad set of events.
Right.
Which ultimately, ended up with Jimmy Henchman in prison.
According to reports, Yayo and Fletcher confronted the 14-year-old boy for wearing a Czar Entertainment hoodie, Henchman's company. Fletcher pleaded guilty to endangering the welfare of a child and served time. In retaliation, on September 27, 2009, Fletcher was murdered in the Bronx shortly after his release from prison. Federal prosecutors would later name Jimmy Henchman as the orchestrator of the murder-for-hire plot. Court documents and trial transcripts from Henchman's case confirm that he paid individuals to track down and execute Fletcher in response to the earlier assault. This wasn't just about image anymore. It was an act of violent retribution that connected Henchman directly to a murder, and in doing so, forced him to confront the reality that 50 Cent's circle, operations, and responses went beyond music industry norms. James J. Rosemond, better known in the music and street world as Jimmy Henchman, was born in Harlem, New York City in 1965 and raised primarily in Brooklyn. His name became widely known in both hip-hop and law enforcement circles due to his dual reputation, one as a successful entertainment mogul and the other as the alleged leader of a powerful criminal enterprise.
And I felt that that was something appropriate for the amount of years that I've been in the music business, that I would become a music czar when you have great artists like Game.
Henchman began his rise in the entertainment world in the 1990s, following a turbulent youth that included brushes with the law. According to federal records and verified court testimonies, his criminal history dates back to the mid to late 1980s. In 1988, he was convicted on drug-related charges in North Carolina, involving the possession and transportation of controlled substances. Though he served time, his name would re-emerge years later, not as a criminal, but as a business figure in the rap industry. By the early 2000s, Rosemond had successfully rebranded himself in the public eye. He founded Czar Entertainment, a management and brand development company that quickly gained influence in the hip-hop world. Czar Entertainment managed a growing roster of high-profile artists, including The Game, Sean Kingston, Akon, Mario Winans, and Gorilla Black. Henchman operated out of Manhattan and Los Angeles, securing endorsements, brokering licensing deals, and arranging publicity campaigns, all while becoming known as a power player with deep connections across the industry. Henchman's most visible and controversial role came when he served as the personal manager of The Game, during a time when the Compton rapper was embroiled in a highly publicized feud with 50 Cent and the G Unit crew. This feud escalated in early 2005, when The Game was ousted from G Unit and the two camps began trading diss records, online insults, and eventually, violent street-level encounters. Due to his managerial position, Henchman was frequently viewed as a central figure in the conflict, though he publicly denied any direct involvement in the violence that followed. By 2007, while maintaining his status as a legitimate business executive, Henchman became the subject of intense scrutiny by federal law enforcement agencies. A multi-year investigation led by the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and Internal Revenue Service, IRS, in conjunction with local law enforcement, eventually alleged that Rosemond was operating a multi-million-dollar cocaine trafficking operation that used FedEx and other courier services to move large amounts of cocaine from the West Coast to New York and cash proceeds in the opposite direction. According to federal indictments unsealed in 2010 and 2011, Rosemond allegedly oversaw a complex and structured narcotics network, utilizing a series of couriers and shell companies to avoid detection. The operation reportedly distributed hundreds of kilograms of cocaine over several years and laundered millions in profits through music-related business fronts. Surveillance, cooperating witness testimony, and intercepted communications were used to build the case against him. On June 20, 2011, Rosemond was arrested by federal authorities after a fugitive warrant had been issued for him. At the time of his arrest, he was reportedly hiding in a friend's apartment in Manhattan. A federal grand jury later indicted him on 13 felony counts, including narcotics distribution, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. These charges would ultimately expose the darker side of his dual persona, the executive in boardrooms and the alleged kingpin behind closed doors. Jimmy Henchman was tried in Brooklyn federal court in 2012, and after a lengthy trial with over 50 witnesses, including insiders from his drug network, he was convicted on all counts. He was later sentenced to life in prison. This was just the beginning of a series of legal blows, as other charges related to violence and murder for hire would follow in separate trials. Though many in the music industry once saw Henchman as a powerful connector and strategist, the criminal convictions painted a sharply different picture. His legacy remains deeply controversial, one foot in the music industry, the other in the world of organized crime. Curtis James Jackson III, professionally known as 50 Cent, was born on July 6, 1975, in the South Jamaica neighborhood of Queens, New York City. His early life was marked by instability and exposure to street crime. His mother, Sabrina Jackson, was a drug dealer who raised him as a single parent. When Curtis was just 8 years old, Sabrina died in what was widely reported as a suspicious fire, believed to be connected to her drug activities. Following her death, Jackson was raised by his grandmother, Beulah Jackson, in a household with multiple other children. In his teenage years, Curtis became deeply involved in the local drug trade. According to his own accounts and court documents, by age 12, he was selling narcotics in his neighborhood during the height of the 1980s crack epidemic. Despite multiple arrests in the early 1990s, including a 1994 charge for possession of heroin, crack cocaine, and a starter pistol, Jackson continued to pursue music. Under the mentorship of Jam Master Jay of Run DMC, he learned to write songs, count bars, and structure recordings. 50 Cent's life changed dramatically on May 24, 2000, when he was shot 9 times at close range outside his grandmother's home on 161st Street in South Jamaica. The attack left him with injuries to his hand, arm, hip, chest, and left cheek, where a bullet passed through his mouth and out his cheekbone, permanently altering his voice. The shooter was later identified by law enforcement as Daryl Hamo Baum, a known associate of Mike Tyson. Baum was murdered 3 weeks later in Brooklyn, in what investigators believed was a retaliatory killing. The near-fatal shooting had a profound effect on 50 Cent's public identity. Rather than retreating, he used his survival as a symbol of resilience. After recovering, he returned to music with a vengeance, recording dozens of mixtape tracks with his G-Unit affiliates, Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo. His 2002 mixtape, Guess Who's Back, caught the attention of Eminem, who brought him to the attention of Dr. Dre, impressed by his raw style and street credibility. They signed him to Shady/Aftermath/Interscope in a joint venture. In February 2003, 50 Cent released his debut studio album, Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Executive produced by Eminem and Dr. Director, the album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 872,000 copies in its first week, and eventually surpassing 12 million units sold worldwide. It included major singles like In Da Club, 21 Questions, and Many Men, Wish Death, with lyrics heavily inspired by his real-life experiences. 50 Cent leveraged his early success into a multifaceted career. He launched G-Unit Records, signing artists such as The Game, Young Buck, and Lloyd Banks, and expanded into film, Get Rich or Die Tryin', Home of the Brave, video games, 50 Cent Bulletproof, and business ventures including a major stake in Vitamin Water, which Coca-Cola acquired in 2007 for $4.1 billion, netting Jackson a reported $100 million. By the mid-2000s, 50 Cent had become a dominant figure in both hip-hop and corporate boardrooms, known for his unfiltered approach and strategic mind. His reputation for provocation, however, was not just lyrical. It often spilled into real-world conflicts. One of the most intense of these involved his fallout with The Game in 2005. What began as a music dispute quickly escalated into a violent feud involving affiliates from both sides, including Tony Yayo, Slowbucks, and later, Jimmy Henchman. Henchman's involvement, particularly as The Game's manager, intensified the feud. It brought a layer of real-world criminal tension that stood apart from typical rap beefs. By this point, 50 Cent had already survived assassination attempts, legal investigations, and industry blackballing. The conflict with Henchman underscored that 50's career had never been detached from the streets. It was forged in them. Curtis Jackson's survival from a violent past and his ability to weaponize that survival into music, business, and branding became central to his mythos. Whether in boardrooms, studios, or the streets, 50 Cent carried the mindset of a man who believed he had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The animosity between Jimmy Henchman and 50 Cent was not a spontaneous clash, but rather the result of intersecting rivalries and escalating tensions within the hip-hop industry, particularly in the early to mid-2000s. The root of the conflict can be traced back to two major developments: 50 Cent's long-standing feud with Murder Inc. Records, and the public fallout between 50 Cent and The Game, both of which pulled Henchman into the fray. By the time 50 Cent rose to mainstream dominance with Get Rich or Die Tryin' in 2003, he had already positioned himself as an antagonist of Ja Rule and Irv Gotti, the faces of Murder Inc. Their beef extended beyond music. It involved street-level violence, attempted assaults, and federal investigations into Murder Inc.'s alleged ties to drug trafficker Kenneth Supreme McGriff. 50 Cent's aggressive style, combined with his refusal to back down from confrontation, set the tone for how future conflicts would be handled. In late 2003, 50 Cent signed The Game, a Compton-based rapper, to G-Unit Records through a joint venture with Dr. Dre's Aftermath Entertainment and Interscope. The Game's debut album, The Documentary, released in January 2005, was a massive success. However, creative and personal differences quickly emerged. The Game refused to participate in 50 Cent's ongoing beefs with other artists, including Nas, Fat Joe, and Jadakiss, causing internal friction within G-Unit. On February 28, 2005, the simmering tension exploded. During a radio interview at Hot 97 in New York City, 50 Cent publicly announced that The Game was no longer part of G-Unit. That same night, gunfire erupted outside the radio station between the two camps. A member of The Game's entourage, Kevin Reed, was shot and wounded. The public feud escalated with diss tracks, video mockeries, and confrontational interviews on both sides. At the center of The Game's business operations was Jimmy Henchman, founder of Czar Entertainment and now The Game's manager. With Henchman acting as Game's representative, his role evolved from being a behind-the-scenes executive to a direct participant in one of hip-hop's most volatile feuds. Henchman and 50 Cent never engaged in musical battles, but the decisions Henchman made, especially his alleged efforts to block 50 Cent from certain press and media outlets, heightened the rivalry. 50 Cent, never one to remain silent, repeatedly accused Henchman in interviews of leveraging his industry influence to sabotage his business moves and reputation. These accusations weren't unfounded. According to sources close to both camps, Henchman allegedly used his relationships with journalists, BET executives, and other gatekeepers to limit 50's exposure during key industry moments. These behind-the-scenes maneuvers, while unofficial, were interpreted by G-Unit as strategic warfare. The feud between 50 and Henchman left the realm of lyrical sparring and ventured into street-level aggression. G-Unit members, including Tony Yayo, became involved in confrontations with individuals affiliated with Henchman's camp. Most notably, on March 20, 2007, Tony Yayo was accused of slapping James Roseman Jr., Jimmy Henchman's 14-year-old son, outside the offices of Czar Entertainment on Manhattan's West Side. Though Yayo later denied the accusation and was ultimately sentenced to community service, the incident marked a dangerous turning point. Following this, tensions continued to rise. On September 27, 2009, Lowell "Lodi Mac" Fletcher, a G-Unit affiliate and close associate of Tony Yayo, was murdered in the Bronx just 2 weeks after being released from prison. Federal prosecutors would later accuse Henchman of orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot in retaliation for the Yayo James Roseman Jr. incident. According to court testimony, Henchman allegedly paid individuals to carry out the hit, offering cash and drugs as compensation. This marked a dark evolution in the conflict from industry politics and public feuding to federal charges, homicide investigations, and convictions. By the time authorities connected the dots, it was clear this was not a typical hip-hop beef. It had become a full-scale criminal case involving organized retaliation, surveillance, and murder. Unlike most rap feuds that fizzle out through music or fade away with time, the conflict between 50 Cent and Jimmy Henchman became embedded in federal court dockets and FBI case files. It wasn't just about ego or image. It was about power, respect, and revenge in both the music business and the streets.
So a situation happened with Jimmy's 14-year-old son.
Right. You know the story,
I know the story.
it was street shit.
On March 20th, 2007, a confrontation took place that would mark a major escalation in the growing feud between G-Unit and Jimmy Henchman's camp. That afternoon, Tony Yayo, a founding member of G-Unit and longtime associate of 50 Cent, was arrested and charged with the assault of a minor, specifically the 14-year-old son of Henchman, James "Lil" Henchman Roseman Jr. The incident occurred in broad daylight outside the offices of Violator Management, located on 9th Avenue near 50th Street in Manhattan. According to NYPD reports and statements from witnesses, the teenager was leaving the building while wearing a Czar Entertainment sweatshirt, the label founded and run by Henchman. The logo reportedly caught the attention of G-Unit affiliates. James Jr. was approached by Tony Yayo and Lowell "Lodi Mac" Fletcher, both of whom allegedly confronted him about the sweatshirt. During the altercation, the boy was allegedly slapped, cursed at, and threatened, with the confrontation clearly tied to the ongoing tensions between Henchman and G-Unit. Initial media reports identified Tony Yayo as the main assailant, sparking public outrage and debate over whether the attack on a minor was meant as a deliberate message. Yayo initially denied involvement, claiming he had no interaction with the boy and had simply exited the building with his entourage. However, surveillance footage and multiple witness testimonies complicated his defense. Later in court proceedings, Lowell "Lodi Mac" Fletcher, a known G-Unit affiliate and convicted felon, accepted responsibility for the assault, stating that he acted alone and without Yayo's knowledge.
I felt like if it was my son, then, I don't know, maybe the same events might have occurred. So if you slap my son, you might meet your maker. That's just me.
Despite this, Tony Yayo was ordered to serve 10 days of community service as part of a non-jail plea agreement. Lodi Mack, already on parole at the time of the incident, faced harsher consequences. He was sentenced to prison for violating parole conditions and committing assault on a minor. The incident drew widespread media attention. For many in the industry, it was shocking to see the feud take such a personal turn. For Jimmy Henchman, the incident was more than a public embarrassment. It was a deeply personal offense. According to later court testimony and federal indictments, Henchman viewed the assault as a violation that required retaliation. He allegedly told multiple associates that it was time to send a message. Law enforcement documents revealed that in the weeks following the incident, Henchman began quietly assembling a network of trusted individuals, including members of his alleged narcotics crew, to help him plot a retaliatory response. Surveillance, intercepted calls, and witness statements would later be used to show that Henchman orchestrated an internal order to handle the situation in the streets, not in court or in the press. The attack on James Jr. would serve as a turning point. It transformed the Henchman vs. G Unit feud from a series of threats, diss records, and power plays into a personal vendetta with life and death consequences. While many rap rivalries involve aggressive posturing and media battles, this incident marked the first undeniable instance of physical harm tied directly to the power struggle between both camps. From that moment forward, Henchman's responses would no longer be symbolic or strategic. They would be lethal and deliberate. The assault on his teenage son became, in his mind, the first real shot, and the streets would eventually feel the weight of what followed. On September 27, 2009, Lowell Fletcher was shot and killed in the Bronx. He had been released from prison just 2 weeks earlier after serving time for his role in the Yayo incident. According to federal prosecutors, the murder was a direct act of retaliation ordered by Jimmy Henchman. In later testimony, Henchman's associates revealed that he paid $30,000 to carry out the hit. This murder would become the centerpiece of the government's murder-for-hire case against him. The individuals involved in the shooting later cooperated with authorities, providing details that linked Henchman directly to the killing. As the violence escalated, federal agents began building a case against Jimmy Henchman. The investigation revealed a network of drug trafficking, illegal cash transfers, and multiple acts of intimidation. The FBI used informants and wiretaps to gather evidence over several years. The government's case eventually included charges of running a continuing criminal enterprise, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. Much of the evidence came from recorded conversations, cooperating witnesses, and surveillance.
It's all documented, like you could look it up, so I don't want to seem like I'm dry snitching. It's like if you read Jimmy Henchman case, but the hitman was actually in jail with my friend. So he befriended him in jail. And then when he got home, that's the same hitman that was his friend in jail. It was the actual hitman.
In 2014, Jimmy Henchman was convicted on multiple federal charges, including murder for hire in connection to the killing of Lodi Mack. He was sentenced to life in prison. A previous conviction in 2012 had already resulted in a life sentence for drug trafficking, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. During the trial, witnesses testified that Henchman had orchestrated the murder of Fletcher in retaliation for the assault on his son. The court proceedings included testimonies from former allies who turned state witnesses. Evidence presented included phone records, payment trails, and logistics showing Henchman's coordination of the killing. The fallout from the Henchman 50 Cent conflict changed the tone in parts of the music industry. Executives, artists, and managers became more cautious about blending street credibility with business operations. The situation demonstrated that image-based conflicts could evolve into federal indictments and life-altering consequences. While 50 Cent continued to expand his career into film, television, and business, Henchman's downfall served as a cautionary tale. It highlighted the risks of operating in both worlds, one foot in the streets and the other in corporate boardrooms. For the industry, it was a turning point that exposed the blurred lines between entertainment and real-life criminal activity. In the end, the clash between 50 Cent and Jimmy Henchman wasn't just about music or street beef. It was a battle for survival. A dangerous game where power plays turned into real-world violence, and what started as a rivalry in the spotlight became a fight for life and legacy.